Hi, welcome back. In the last video, I demonstrated how automation could be used to test web tables. I ran a couple of test cases, reviewed the results, and went over the basic automation code at a test case level. In this video, I will do a deep dive into the WebTable methods I created to code the WebTable test cases. Please remember, the videos in this series aren't meant to train anyone on how to automate, but only to show you my coding style. For this video, it is best to have at least some Selenium automation experience in order to better understand the deep dive, and also best to have already watched the previous video before watching this one. Before I begin the deep dive code, I need to tell you that the web table I automated is not a simple basic web table. If it were an ordinary table, I would have created web table methods for parameters for passing in the web table element, so that they could be used for any web table. This would have been similar to the enter field data and verify field methods I created, which I explained in the previous videos, used for common elements like text fields and checkboxes. Also, if you have only worked with basic web tables, then you may end up wondering why my code may seem more complicated than it has to be. So let me show you the DOM of a simple web table, and then I will show you the DOM of the web table from my demo, as well as the web element locators I used in my code to identify parts of the table. Here is a typical simple web table. It has a table tag with an ID equal to table 1 that can be used to identify the first of these two web elements. tBody tag for the web table body, and tr tag for the table row. The first row contains th tags that contain the table header names. The next tr tag contains the data for the first data row. It contains td tags, table data, for each column in the first data row. Then for all the remaining data rows, there is the same tr-td tag hierarchy. Now let me show you the table automated in my demo test case. This is the locator I used to identify the web table. In the simple table, header content and the data contents were both inside the tBody element. But in this table, they are inside two separate elements. You will notice that there are a lot more parent-child levels of elements between each data and header row throughout the DOM. Let's expand the element containing the header content. Here you can see the text content of the first header column. This is the locator I used to identify the collection of all the header columns. Let me do a search through all these elements so you can see them. To do the search, I will paste the locator here and then hit the Enter keyboard key to navigate through each one. I will collapse the header content. Now let's expand the body content, which holds all the data rows. Here you can see the text that is in each column of the first row. In the DOM, there are odd and even table rows. I used this XPath to identify the rows that contain the data. Notice I use the expression OR so that it will identify both odd and even rows. Let me do a search for these elements so you can see them all. Scrolling past these three rows that contain data, we get to the empty rows. They differ from the rows containing data in that the parameter pad row is part of the class value for the empty rows. So if I also wanted to identify only empty rows, I would add -pad row to the locator. Let me highlight each of those 7 empty rows. And if I wanted to get the row count of all the rows, both empty and the ones with data, I would go up one level to the parent element by using this CSS selector. Let me highlight those rows now. And finally, we have the edit icon. I use the ID to identify it, and I modify it so I can pass in the index to match the row number to click in. So this is for row number 3. Now that I finished the deep dive for all the web elements used, let me show you the web table methods where I will concentrate on the code logic. There are two main web table methods that were used to create the web table test cases executed in my last video. WebTable verify cell data and WebTable action click. Just a quick reminder on how the verify method is to be understood for our example. In the first name column, find the row with Alden in it. Then in the same row, in the last name column, verify it is Control. And a reminder on how the action click method works. It is clicking the edit icon under the action column for the row where first name is Kiera and last name is Gentry. To create the two main WebTable methods and other main WebTable methods, I usually create these three basic core methods: a method to return the row count, a method to return the column count, and a method to return the cell data, where I pass in the column and row position of a cell in order to get the value in that cell. These three methods are the essential methods used to create more sophisticated methods. Many times, when additional WebTable methods are created, these three main methods are called inside loops to iterate through the cell in the WebTable, searching for data and retrieving that data. I will now deep dive into the first of the two main methods, the WebTable verify cell data method. Let's use this line of code from the test case as an example for walking through the code. It will verify that the first name Alden with the last name Cantrell has the age 45. Here is the method definition. The first thing the WebTable verify cell data does is get the total number of rows that contain data. In our example, it will be 3. Then it will loop through the 3 rows, capturing the values from the first name and last name columns in each iteration, using the iteration number as the row number to search in. Once both Alden and Cantrell are found in the same row, which will be in iteration 2, the code will get the age in that same row and then break out of the loop. Then the code evaluates the age it captured to the expected age passed into the method. It then prepares the test step message based on the evaluation. And finally, it reports the test step by executing this method I created here. Now I am going to deep dive into the WebTable methods used to create the WebTable verify cell data method. WebTable return row count with data is the first method. Here is its definition. I use the built-in Selenium method .size to get the count for the total number of rows containing data. It counts the number of instances this web element exists, and then the row count is returned back to the verification method. The last WebTable method called in method WebTable verify cell data is the WebTable return cell data method. Let me show you its definition. Here it is. It gets the cell data based on 2 input parameters, the row position and the column position. But I use method overloading so that instead of only using the column position, the column name can be used too. Most of the time, it is better to use the method that uses the column name, because if the position of the column changes in the WebTable, and I've seen this happen many times, then using the method with the column position will not give the correct results. Both versions call a master version, and they all return the cell data found. So the master method is really the only code in these two methods. This is similar to the enter field data and verify field data methods that also only use the master version method, as explained in a previous video. Continuing the execution flow with the example from the test case, when the master version named WebTable return cell data _LF is called, 2 is passed in as the row number, and age is passed in for the column name. I created this method, WebTable return column position, that will get the integer position of the age column, which is 3. These lines are used to get the list of web elements, which are row elements, from the WebTable. We only need row 2 from that list. So this line is used to get a list of data from all the columns in row 2. And from that data, this line gets the value that is in the age column, which is in column position 3. Note that in these two lines, the number 1 is subtracted from the row and column position, because the index for each starts with a 0. Now the cell data can be returned back to WebTable return cell data, which returns it back to WebTable verify cell data, where the evaluation of the actual to expected cell data is done. And then it reports either a pass or failed step. Going back to the master method, WebTable return cell data LF, I mentioned what the method WebTable return column position does, but I still did not do a deep dive into it. So in the method, the column name is passed in and the column position is returned. Let me show you the method definition. The first thing it does is create a list of web elements, which is a list of header columns in the table. This line then gets the header column count, and this code iterates through the list of columns, each time getting the text in the next column header. Once it gets text from a column that matches the column name passed into the method, which was column age, the code breaks out of the loop. It will return the iteration it broke out of, which is used as the column position. So that covers the code for the first main method, WebTable verify cell data. Now let me deep dive into the second main method, WebTable action click, where it will click the edit icon under the action column for the row where first name is Kiera and last name is Gentry. Here's the definition for the method WebTable action click. I placed a sample call above the definition for use as a template so it is easy for an automation engineer to copy and paste and then modify. In a professional project, I do this for most methods. The first thing the method does is figure out which row to click the edit icon in. This will be done based on these parameters, and they are passed into this method, WebTable return row containing cell data, that will return the row number to click in. Then the row number is passed into this method, WebTable action click LF, which will click on the edit icon. Besides the row number, all the arguments passed into the WebTable action click method are also passed into the WebTable action click LF, so that when the edit click step is reported to the results, all the details are included. Now let's deep dive into the two methods called in this WebTable action click method. Here's the WebTable return row containing cell data method definition. It will figure out which row to click the edit icon so that it can return the row number back to the WebTable action click LF method. The first thing it does is get the total number of rows that contain data. In our example, it will be 3. Then it will loop through the 3 rows, capturing the value of the first name and last name columns in each iteration. Once both Kiera and Gentry are found, which will be iteration 3, the method will break out of the loop, and then the method will return the iteration it broke out of, which is used as the row number to indicate which edit icon to click. The row number returned from the WebTable return row containing cell data method gets passed into the next method named WebTable action click LF. The first thing WebTable action click LF does is determine what action to do. In our example, it will click the edit icon. The XPath is updated with the row number so that the correct edit icon is clicked. If all goes well, a pass step is reported with all the necessary column names, values, and information. Please note that some code is still required for reporting failed steps if the edit icon is not clicked. And that is the last step to execute in the WebTable action click method. That covers the most important WebTable methods used to automate the WebTable test cases I demoed. In a future video, once the code is ready, I will show similar code where a WebTable element can be passed into methods so that any basic WebTable can use the same exact methods. If you have any questions, please email me at the email address that can be found in the description under this video. Please also look there for the link to my next video. Thank you.